Well, as was it Betty Davis who said, "Fasten your seatbelts. We're in for a bumpy ride," and we are having that bumpy ride. I know your fingers are just hovering over the phone. You want to talk about that debate last night. We have a couple of interviews to do this morning. We're going to get all your calls in. The Hickson Hazard hotline is warming up right now. 844-766-6607. And as you have, I know you've gathered, I'm Carol Ross, yes, subbing for the wonderful Moon Griffon. I think Moon just wanted to get away from it all for a while. I think the boy is out fishing or something. I don't know where he is. But anyway, maybe he'll bring us some fish this time. Never has in the past, but maybe he will this time. Anyway, it's a great pleasure to be with you all this morning. I know you watched every minute of that debate. I know you want to talk about the debate. We are going to have a couple of interviews this morning. Gentleman who's running for Congress, Greg Ellison, in the 3rd Congressional District. And I believe a little bit later on we're going to be talking about to Colonel Rob Maness about this controversy brewing. But I did read that yesterday, Brandon. But the Fleming people have denied it. So, and there's no third-party validation except for the gentleman who works at the Maness campaign.
Yep. Just he said at this point. Which candidate do you believe?
Yeah. Exactly. So these things happen. Misunderstandings happen. People can interpret things certain ways. I don't know. We'll talk to Colonel Maness and get the scoop. And I knew you were going to be raring to go this morning. We are so glad to hear from you. We want to get as many calls in as possible. We have a bunch of interviews to do. We want to talk a little bit about the Troy Hebert's charges about the debate, the exclusion of so many people from the senatorial debate. Co-sponsored by LPB and cable. So we'll get to that interview as well. The local station here did a great interview with Mr. Hebert, and we'll get to his reasoning behind why he thought that there should have been more. And we discussed that on the local show, too. That was kind of one of the things we talked about. And the thing that struck me, and I'm going to get into this later on because this is one of my little hang-ups, Hillary Clinton, right out of the box, what did she say? Citizens United. They were talking about the Supreme Court. Here she goes again. You mention 2 little words, Citizens United, to a lib, and they go absolutely ape you know what. Because it finally leveled the playing field, finally, with all the media in the bag for the Democrats, and we see that more than ever right now with all those WikiLeaks. Oh, my goodness. Questions being fed. Megyn Kelly nailed Donna Brazile. Oh, you're persecuting me. Really? That's what you're going to retreat behind? The little, poor little me. You're a tough political operative. You know what you did. You fed her the question before the debate. Own up to it. Man up. Woman up. Anyway, that was a great soundbite from Megyn Kelly. In case you didn't know, Donna Brazile was a commentator for CNN, and she insists CNN didn't give her the question. So Megyn said, well, who did? Who did? And she was avoiding the question, and finally Megyn wouldn't let it up, and she said, you're persecuting me. Anyway, so there you go, Citizens United. Red flag to a lib. And why? Because it finally leveled the playing field. We've gotten some down-ballot races. We got the House. We got the Senate. Because of the additional freedom of speech that we gained through Citizens United. We'll talk about that decision a little bit later. But it's no surprise that that's exactly where she went. Next thing you know, they'll be going after the Fairness Doctrine, trying to reinstitute that and kill talk radio, shows like Moon Griffon, Rush Limbaugh, etc. That's going to be the next thing. Watch for it. They keep trying. They keep nibbling around the edges. They will come. They'll come for your talk show next. Okay, people. Let me see. We've got a call already? No? Okay, good, Brandon, because we have so much to talk about, and I know the phones are getting ready to ring off the hook. But we do have an interview coming up. We got a little talk with Troy Hebert that we're going to play for you about the debate, the senatorial debate, and why there weren't more candidates there, and why there should have been more than one debate. They did it on the federal level. They did it for the primaries, the Republican primary especially. I remember they had to have 2 different, like the pre-debate and the big debate, the little debate and the big debate. Anyway, they could have done that with the Senate candidates if you wanted to do it that way. So there are any number of options, and Troy Hebert makes some very good points. We're going to take a break right now because we are going to have to, we have Greg Ellison with us. He's going to be talking to us about the 3rd Congressional District race. So You want to get in on the action? 844-7-MOON-07. 844-766-6607. You're on the Moon Griffon Show. I'm Carol Ross, and with producer Brandon. We're going to be here. We hope you stick with us. See, Brandon knows how to make the host happy. Brandon understands what makes the host happy.
I was rushing throwing in bumper music for you, Carol.
You saved from the last time I came, you know?
I have some of those. I'm going to have to bring some of those out, too.
So we're not going to use all that John Fogerty, Creedence Clearwater.
No, we're not going to do the old school today.
I hope Moon's not listening. He's going to get very upset. We're very happy to have with us in studio gentleman running for Congress from the 3rd Congressional District, the seat being vacated by Congressman Bustani, who is now running for Senate. Greg Ellison, and full disclosure, I've known Greg for a long time. He's a great guy, but I'm going to let him tell you about himself. Greg, welcome to the Moon Griffon Show.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Brandon. Just a little bit of my background. I was raised in South Louisiana, graduated from Lafayette High at the height of the Vietnam War. I raised my hand and volunteered to join the United States Army. Graduated from West Point.
Man. In Vietnam, oh boy.
I didn't serve in Vietnam, but I graduated from West Point, and I'm a Republican. And when I tell people I graduated from West Point, they ask me, because John Bell took the brand the other way. He says, same leadership skills, but I graduated from West Point. I had 1,500 soldiers. I was the operations officer in Iraq. My guys and I planned and supervised 9 raids into Iraq. Was on the command list, decided that we wanted to come back home so our kids could grow up and have the roots that we had in South Louisiana. Came back here and been in the oil and gas business for the last 19 years. So I know how to create jobs in the oil and gas business. Yes.
Oh, yeah. What really prompted you to run for Congress? This is really out of your wheelhouse, I would have thought. But you're doing a great job, and you're...
surprisingly, I prepared my whole life for this, But I surveyed the landscape, and we live in a dangerous world. And I'm in it for my children and our grandchildren because I want them to have the same opportunities that we had. We lived in the golden age of America, and that's slipping away. And I'm going to be one of 435 votes when I get there, and it's about leadership, and I have that leadership.
Well, I think your career in the military... How long were you in the military? 19?
24 years. 4 as a cadet, 20-plus years in the United States Army. Pair of boots on the ground in Iraq. Okay,
so your priorities right now, as you see it, as you approach this campaign and possibility of going to Washington, what would your priorities be?
My number one priority is the oil and gas business, getting us back to work. There are over 20,000 of our good friends and neighbors out of work. And when you do the economic theory, that's maybe 60,000 people in this area are affected. If we don't get the oil and gas business back to work, our children and grandchildren are going to have to move away. And that's not why I moved back to South Louisiana. We need a robust Louisiana, and that's dependent upon the oil and gas sector.
Now, there are people who are going to push back on you about climate change and going to clean energy and all, but you don't exclude that, do you?
Well, if it makes economic sense and it can pay for itself, who can be against it? But if we have to subsidize it, no.
Exactly. Okay, so oil and gas. What about Obamacare and some of these other really pressing national issues that are affecting us?
Well, ISIS is in my wheelhouse. I describe ISIS as being a political movement masquerading as a religion. What's going on in the Middle East today is nothing more than a continuation of a 1,400-year-old war. It's hopped the fence. It's come here, and it's affecting our way of life and how we assemble. We're going to have to deal with that. There's another problem called our national debt. It's a cancer that's growing inside of us, and our career politicians can't do anything about it. I like to talk about the national debt. When our parents talk to us, they say, if you get a credit card, pay it off at the end of the month because the interest is going to kill you. No one looks at the interest payment, so I'm going to focus on the interest payment. Interest payment last year on the national debt was $231 billion. I call that throwaway money. In 8 short years, the interest payment on the debt is going to be $800 billion of throwaway money.
Not sustainable, is it?
Absolutely not. I call them the economic hurricanes that are stacked in waves getting ready to come ashore. And in 17 years from now, all the federal money going to Washington politicians call it revenue. Carol, you and I, Brandon, call it taxes. Mm-hmm. It's going to be consumed by the mandatory spending programs and the interest on the debt.
So no money for infrastructure like the candidates, the Democrats love to. Well, Obama said we had shovel-ready projects, and then he admitted 8 years later that, of course, no.
No money for roads, bridges, military, the education, and then we'll be faced with the crisis of having to print money, and businesses will constrict because we're competing with the government for money, and the interest rates will go up.
How does your position on immigration play into this?
Well, we're a nation of laws, and we must protect our borders. If we are a welfare state like we are, and we have porous borders, we're going to commit suicide. You know, it's more difficult to fly across America today from point A to point B than it is to cross our southern border.
It's a scary thought. And so you agree to a degree with Donald Trump about not being able to vet who's coming in.
Oh, absolutely. Syria is in the midst of a civil war. If they had the institutions that allowed you to vet people like a clerk of courts, I doubt that they ever existed. You know how they vet people? The Syrians move into the Jordanian desert, and the first step in vetting them comes from the United Nations High Command.
That really reassures me.
They gather all the lists, and then we send a team over there, and we start to vet them. So our guys say, hey, we take their fingerprints, we take their eyeball prints, and we run them through the American database.
Well, they're not going to be in the American database.
Absolutely.
Well, I saw that story on 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes showed this process, and the first thing was the UN. And I thought, how can anybody have any confidence in this process if the UN is running it? They've shown themselves to be totally incompetent in these types of things.
I couldn't agree more. You know, and we need to operate in our own vested interest. I was the chief of war plans for the biggest post, tactical war plans, Fort Hood, Texas, during the last days of the Cold War. You know, and we had small little nuclear devices that would fit in a suitcase to blow up the Rhine River bridges, to hold the Soviets back out. And, you know, the enemy, the Russians, the Iranians, the North Koreans, they know our border is porous. And who knows can slip over, you know? So we need to protect our border, protect our way of life.
I'll tell you what worries me right now, and I hope Congress pays a little more attention to it, is what Russia is doing, massing troops on their western flank. You know, going into Crimea was one thing, but now they're moving into position troops in Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, those famous little places. I've been to a couple of those places. Those people love freedom. They love Ronald Reagan. They came of age. They got out of under the Soviet boot, and now it looks like Putin is making moves on them again. And NATO, I mean, they went right through Crimea, and NATO was totally useless. I mean, they didn't do anything. Article 5 they totally ignored, which says that if one nation in NATO is attacked, all the others will come to their defense. That didn't happen. Simply didn't happen. He's still rattling sabers in Ukraine. They're making incursions into the Ukraine. What committees will you get on? Will you get on armed services? Will you get on any of the defense committees and look at those kind of things?
Well, first let me address your point. It says we've suffered through 8 years of the policies of appeasement of Hillary and Barack Obama, and our enemies have noticed. They pushed into the vacuum. You know, we've reduced the size of the U.S. Army to its lowest level since before World War II. Our airplanes are old, and our fleet is deteriorating. So the enemies have noticed. They pushed into the power vacuum. You know, the Chinese are building islands 1,000 miles off their coast and display islands. And because we have not remained, the best way to defend is to deter war, and that's being peace through strength. Mm-hmm. And every time we're weak, history is replete with people that are antithetical to our way of life pushing in.
Yep, and they take advantage of the weakness.
You know, I think I'd like to be in the natural resources, committee so that we can. It's important for oil and gas.
You mentioned the interest on the debt, but how do you propose to solve that crushing debt problem that Obama has really dug us in? I mean, George Bush had a hand in it, but nothing like this guy. Nothing like this.
Let me answer this. If we can solve all those problems, the national debt, ISIS, oil and gas business. Hey, what we have to do is we need to. Our moral fabric of our society is unraveling, and we need to create strong families, and that's by promoting laws that look at the integrity of the American family, two parents in the household, imprinting upon their children love of God, discipline, respect, value of education. And we got to get that right.
Okay, but then how do you fund what you're talking? How do we solve that debt problem besides, promoting strong families rather than a stronger government? The government's trying to take over every role in our lives. But how do you do that? How do you get control of that debt? How do you get that debt paid off?
The government puts programs in place that have perpetual life. You need to go back and have everybody come before Congress and justify their programs. Go back to zero-based budgeting is a start, because everybody just takes last year's budget and adds 10% to it. And then you're going to have to reform the big thing is reform the entitlement programs. Yeah,
Congress has seemed unwilling to really exercise its power of the purse. That's where the spending bills originate. They have seemed to me to be unwilling. So you're going to have a big fight on your hands when you go up there,
absolutely.
Because every dollar in that budget has a constituency.
And we don't need to vote for a debt ceiling increase either.
Oh, well, Good. So you pledge not to vote for a debt ceiling increase?
Yeah, I'll fight, if it goes to, shutting down the government. Hey, when they say shut down the government, the bombers still fly. You still have to pay your taxes.
Yeah, that's right.
The infantry still patrols,
Yeah, we found out that last time. What got shut down? About 17% of the government.
Yeah.
Not the whole government. But anyway, I think we're coming up against a break, so we have just about a minute or so for you to give us a wrap up and give us the sales pitch.
Hey, we have 19 days left in this election.
Hard to believe.
And who's counting? But anyway, this race is clearly boiled down to two people, Scott Angel and me. And the differences couldn't be greater. Scott Angel is a career politician. He's been at the center of Louisiana political life for over the last 30 years. And nothing ever changes in Louisiana. We're clearly cemented at the bottom of the best list, the top of the worst list, and nothing ever changes. This race is about leadership and character. Our country awarded me the Bronze Star and the Legion of Merit for my leadership in the most trying of human conditions. And on a night long ago in Iraq, I looked young American combat soldiers in the eye and said, "Follow me through an Iraqi minefield." I was all in then, and I'm all in now. And my name is Lieutenant Colonel Greg Ellison, and I have the proven leadership skills to be your next congressman, and I humbly ask you to vote for me to get Louisiana and America back.
Great job, Greg. Thanks for being with us very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Carol.
All right.
All right.
All right, people. It's your turn now. Give us a call, 877-844-76607. 7-Moon-07. That's what I got to say. All right, we'll be right back on the Moon Griffon Show. Stay with us.
Thank you.
Oh, boy. Love that new bumper music. Moon, if you're listening, you can use it sometime, too. Oh, boy. 19 days till the election? Is that what Mr. Ellison said?
That's correct.
Oh, yes. Hard to believe. That debate last night. Oh, really? As I mentioned in the opening to the show, first thing Hillary went after in the Supreme Court segment. And by the way, before we get into Hillary or Donald or anything else, I will say this. I think it was tough. It was a tough job for Chris Wallace to try to keep them on track. But one thing that I wish he had done, because she was filibustering half the time in her answers, and I wish he had interrupted her as much as he did Donald Trump. I think he did a little bit more on Donald Trump. I think as the debate went on, it got a little more even-handed. But I think Chris Wallace did a good job, and I think his questions were very good. He didn't let either one of them off the hook, and it came to be a very clear delineation on those Supreme Court issues. The LGBT, the gun show. No, it's not a gun show loophole, people. There may be some gaps in the background checks, but it's not a gun show loophole. Then he brought up Heller versus D.C., which Hillary Clinton did go ballistic on, so to speak, pardon the pun. But the court was very clear on that one. And I think Donald Trump scored a good point on that one in terms of on gun control, saying that Chicago has some of the strongest, well, if not the strongest gun control laws in the country, and they're out of control because obviously the people who are doing the shooting, are not going to respect the laws one way or the other. They're just not going to do it. And that's the fallacy of any kind of gun control. People who are law-abiding will abide the laws, and you don't need gun control for those kind of people. It's the other guys that need it but don't respect it. So what is the point? Anyway, so that was an interesting thing. But her going off on Citizens United almost immediately is the thing that really, really should scare everybody. It's a question of limiting speech. Now, if they didn't have the media in their back pocket and the unions, and by the way, if you look at the breakdown of where business contributes and where the unions contribute, unions 93% to Democrats. Business has to split it, 60-40. They got to cover their bases because you never know, where these people are going to come down. So that's typically the way the business community splits up the contributions. It's about 60-40. The unions, not so. So all Citizens United did was kind of level the playing field. And the Supreme Court was very clear. If you limit these kinds of groups, you're limiting free speech. You cannot limit speech. The FEC was talking about spending, but that's not the point. The point is, if you limit that spending to that degree, you are limiting speech. And that's where they came down. So if you want to get in on the conversation, I know you have a lot to talk about with that debate for sure. You can give us a call on the Hickson Has It hotline. Did I mention that earlier? The Hickson Has It hotline, 844-766-6607. And I think we want to play. Well, we have Colonel Manus coming on. Is he? No?
I hadn't heard from him yet.
Okay.
I'm trying to find out about that.
All right. Do we have that Troy Hebert?
Yes.
Just the first part of that interview.
Let me go ahead and get this going here.
Troy Hebert, former senator, former head of the Alcohol Tobacco Agency here in government. Okay. And he was very upset that he was not allowed in the debate. And he says that putting a money limit on the ability is not a very good thing to do. I'll let you tell it you in his own words. The local station here in Lafayette, KPEL, interviewed him.
Candidate Treasurer John Kennedy.
Mm-hmm. And now we have another one.
Now we have another one. Senate candidate Troy Hebert joining us for our 5-question series. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning.
All right, wait. So we have these 5 questions, but
yeah, but you're going to get a little lanyap after that YouTube video that you posted. You're going to get a 6th question, okay?
Okay. So
my first question, did you get a blue verified check mark after that on YouTube? Because Bernie and I mean, we totally see where you're coming from, obviously, with that. We aren't LPB, so we don't know kind of how the decision process goes, but anyone who's willing to kind of get out of their lane for what they believe in, I think we need more of that in Washington.
Yeah. So you really had your own debate, right?
Well, Bernie, it's not easy being John Kennedy. That's why I've been drinking so much weed killer. I have the solutions, but the legislature and the government, they just won't listen, Bernie.
So
I had a lot of
Bernie,
fun.
you have to ask the questions on this one.
making the video. I mean, obviously, it's gotten so ridiculous in our election process to where we have a public entity receiving $8 million a year called Louisiana Public Broadcasting, and they put on a senatorial debate, and they put a criteria that you have to have $1 million in order to qualify to get on the debate. I mean, that's where we're going with these elections. The problem is it's become more about the money than the person.
So I have to ask you.
But let me just.
I got to ask you, Troy, if the
What's
requirement was polling numbers instead of money, would you have still been in that top group?
I would have if you'd used the margin of error, okay? But
Gotcha.
the problem is with the polling criteria is this. They put a criteria that said you had to reach 5%, okay? Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with a polling criteria, but the poll that they used, they said it was nonpartisan, but the 20 people that paid for the poll, many of them gave thousands and thousands of dollars to the 5 people that participated. So it wasn't a fair poll.
Now that's interesting. Okay.
And then the other thing is that think about this poll. There's 24 candidates in this race. I think they included 9 people in the poll. What about the other 15 people? How are they supposed to reach the 5% mark when they wasn't even in the poll?
No.
The whole thing is rigged, and
Wow.
I can tell you this much. I know it was a government-funded debate because there was actually more moderators than there were candidates. Okay? Now, I wish they would have worked as hard on eliminating moderators as they did in eliminating candidates.
U.S. Senate candidate Troy Hebert joining us on the line this morning. What he basically did when he couldn't make it into the debate, he said, well, I'm going to host my own debate, and I'm going to play all the parts. I'm going to ask the questions. I'm going to pretend to be all the candidates. I'm going to do my own, portion, which is, what I would have to say to some of these questions. And it's about 25 minutes long. It's on the KPEL website if you want to check it out. But, you do, whether people agree or disagree with you, you have to say that it is frustrating because how do these other candidates get known, especially when it comes to Louisiana Public Broadcasting, because they do take tax dollar money?
Well, Bernie, it's the chicken and egg debate, okay? And what I mean by that is that the press or LPB is not going to put you on the stage unless you're polling well. Well, you're not going to poll well unless you can get your message out to the media, okay? So it's a chicken and egg. The problem is you know how you can do it? You can do like Caroline Fajar did and a few of the other ones. You can just buy your way in, okay? And then you can do like Bustani and Fleming and John Kennedy. You could just be already in office. But what about the rest of us? What about the rest of us who don't hold a high position? What about the rest of us who can't cut a check for $1 million? The sad part is, you know what the rest of us is? The rest of us are about 95% of the people in Louisiana. So, I mean, the tail's wagging the dog here, and I think people are sick and tired of it. And that's why the sad part is on November 8th, half of the people, Bernie, are going to stay home. And that ought to be a clear message to everybody that people are just so sick and tired of what's going on with these elections. That's why our country's in shambles. That's why the election process, people don't believe in it. They don't even trust or respect the politicians after they get elected. If we don't clean this up, Bernie, we're going to lose our country.
So, Troy, I have to ask, and then we're going to move on to our questions. With a field as large as the Senate field is, 24 candidates, if you are all of a sudden elected or appointed to be the czar of how this happens in the future, how would you handle 24 candidates to effectively get their message out? And we saw the problems they had with 17 when the Republican presidential field started.
Well, look, it's real easy. First of all, I don't think anybody thinks you can put 24 people on the stage. I never thought that. But what you can easily do is that you have 3 debates of 8 people.
Yeah.
Okay? Now listen, we're talking about LPB here. LPB's program, and I promise you, is wide open. They can have 10 debates every day on the air. Nobody watches that stuff anyway. The point is that why don't you have 3 debates of 8? And the reason why LPB should do it, and I understand why a private company wouldn't. Raycom's fixing to have a debate. What's interesting is they're a private company. They didn't have any financial criteria in their debate. But you would think that LPB, who is funded with $8 million of taxpayer money, that they would actually say, you know what, we're going to be the channel who lets the little man on. Because the little man can't get on the big high-paid debates. But the little man should be able to get on a debate that he's actually paying some of it for. So that's your answer. It's not complicated, and we saw it done in the presidential primary.
Wow.
All right, let's move on to our 5 questions that we have. We've been asking all the candidates, again, on the phone with Senate candidate Troy Hebert. Let's start with, how would you do the job of senator better than your competitors to win this race? What sets you apart from the others in the field overall?
Well, the very first thing I would do is that I believe that you ought to have one term as senator. 6 years. And the reason I believe that is because all of these people every day right now before the campaign, they're raising money. Do you know after the person that wins for senator, the very next day they're going to start raising money again for their next election? And the problem is they go to Washington not to go fight and represent for us. What they actually do is go to Washington and start worrying about the next election. That's why we need one term. And we also, and so that's what I commit to. One term. I'm going to go do my job for 6 years over there in the U.S. Senate. I'm going to fight for the people. I'm not going to worry about the special interests. And then I'm coming home and let somebody else have a term. We got 4.5 other million people that can go over there and do it.
That makes sense.
Wow.
So the big thing that voters, especially here in Acadiana, are looking at is the oil industry and the lost jobs in the oil industry, many in the area facing layoffs, some businesses even shutting down operations. What would you do to restore jobs in the oil and gas industry right here in Louisiana?
The best question you could ever ask, because that's what's really meaningful to everybody, especially us in South Louisiana. First of all, as a small businessman, as a non-lawyer, there are 3 job killers that we have in this country. The first one is taxation, the second one is regulation, and the third one is litigation. So the politicians tax us to death, the bureaucrats regulate us to death, and the lawyers sue us to death. Don't take my word for it. Look at your tax bill. Go try to open up a business, see all the regulations, and then ride down the highway and see every other billboard inviting people to sue. All of those things kill jobs. And we're talking about trying to create jobs. Government shouldn't be in the position to create jobs. They should be in a position to encourage the private sector to create jobs. Now, I know people say, well, that's just talk or whatever. Until we fix those 3 things, it's not going to happen. You've beaten good business people over the head, and you're not encouraging them. You're actually discouraging them.
So let's move on to, let's just say you are elected. What does your first month look like in office? Your first order of business, kind of what you want to go as soon as you get there. Now, previous candidates, in fairness, have said one was to find the bathroom and one was to find a parking space.
What do you think the first thing would be that you want to do, Troy?
Well, I heard John Kennedy said the other night that he was going to go to lunch with everybody over there. The first thing I'd like to do is I just want to go have lunch with one person, the President of the United States. That's the only lunch I want to go have. The rest of the time, I'll just eat in my office. And I tell you that because I want to go sit down with the President and say, listen, Mr. President, I'm one of 100 senators. And I promise you this, you can count on me if this is your philosophy and if this is what you're going to work towards. The other thing I'll do, the first bill I'm going to file is that I want to get rid of the EPA. And why? Because we have a DEQ in every state. It's bad enough that they regulate us already. We actually double regulate it. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to file a bill to get rid of the Department of Education. I want you to think about this. The most important thing that we can do is that we have to take care of our children. And yet we have a school board, then we have a state Department of Education tell a school board what to do, and then we have a national Department of Education telling them what to do. And nobody would disagree. Our public school system is in shambles. Mm-hmm. How do you fix it? I don't think it's complicated. You can send a kid to a private school for $6,000. We are paying $10,000 a year to send them to a public school. Why don't we do this? Send every parent a voucher for $8,000. You save the taxpayers $2,000. You give them a couple $1,000 to buy some nice clothes for the kids and some books, and let them send that kid, little Johnny and little Mary, wherever they think is right. Because the parents know how to educate children better than some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C.
All right, question 4, and we're talking with Troy Hebert, one of the candidates for U.S. Senate. All right, our state, we've had our own issues with race. The issue of race has come out in so many different ways in the last couple of years. How do you think race will play a role in how you execute the office if you're elected?
Well, first of all, I don't think we ought to look at things as black and white. We need to look at them as right and wrong. But I want to say this. Now, you got to talk about, I was a Democrat for a long time, so I can say some of these things. Republicans can't. The first thing I think that minorities need to look at is this. You can't demand equality if you want to be treated special, okay? So in other words, the old days when we had separate but equal, well, you can't be equal if you want to be treated separately. And so what we have to do is, look, we have an African American in the White House, okay? This country certainly is not perfect, but we need to get away from about everything being black or white. And we got to restore law and order. I would hate to see what's going on in law enforcement right now. I'm not sure who would really want to be a cop, and I'm really not sure who would want to be a white cop today. Now, having said that is that we all know that the vast majority of all people of all colors, what do they want? They want security. They want to go to bed at night and put their head on the pillow and sleep safe, knowing that their children are safe. And you know the other thing that's really big, going back to education, do you know why white people send their kids to private schools? Because they don't like the public schools. Do you know why black people who can afford to send their kids to private school send them? Because they want the best education for their children. I tell you all that because, again, it's not black and white. Blacks and whites want the same thing. We just need to get away from things being black and white and just say, why don't we just be Americans? Let's not be black Americans, white Americans, Latino Americans. Let's just be Americans and fight the problems that we all know that we share and bring this country forward.
Troy Hebert is our guest. The final question is, it has to do really with perception. What do you think, Troy, is the biggest misperception about you?
Well, I guess the first thing is I talk funny. Okay? I talk funny. If you haven't noticed me, I think I have a little accent. I can turn the thing on. I just can't turn the darn thing off. And the problem is when I go somewhere, my biggest problem is like you just heard me, I just tell it like it is. And that makes Troy Hebert a love-hate guy. You either love Troy Hebert or you hate me. You know, when I took on the district attorney in Ivory Parish, the people who hated the district attorney, they loved me. The people who liked him, they hated me. When I took on the Queen Bee, okay, which, by the way, I got to give it to her. She beat me. She won. But at the end of the day, I was the guy. If you liked her, you hated me. If you hated her, you liked me. The problem is this political correctness we have. I just have never bought into being politically correct. And, you know, my whole political career, I'm 5 for 5 in elections. I've never lost a single election. How did I win? I just won by telling it like it is. But there's a price you pay. And when you talk funny and you go to North Louisiana, they got to put closed caption on the interview because they don't understand what you're saying. Sometimes they think you're not that smart, but you know, that's what I call being country smart. And if country smart doesn't really is enough for some of the blue bloods in Louisiana, well, too bad. But I can tell you this much. There's more working people. There's more poor people. There's more people that talk more like me than there is that don't. And so all they got to do is wake up, go out and vote. I'm the independent running. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. And if they do that, then we'll change things in Washington.
All right. I have one final question. Even though time is gone a little bit over, I am kind of curious about this because you are an independent. We've had some discussions about that here on the show this morning. What is it that moved you? Okay, you used to be a Democrat, then you became a Republican. Now you're an independent. Why?
Actually, I started off as a Republican, then I went Democrat. The point is, it's just real easy. And listen, since 2010, I have to just be honest. When Barack Obama got elected president, okay, I saw that there was going to be no place for a white guy in the Democratic Party. Now, let me give you these statistics real quick. In Louisiana, the Democratic Party is made up of 70% minorities. The Republican Party is made up of 94% white people. And I want to go back to my philosophy. It shouldn't be black or white. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to join a black party, and I'm not going to join a white party. I'm just want to be in a party that says we're going to look for what things are right and wrong. Because at the end of the day, you know, the Democrats actually cater to people who don't want to work. The Republicans are controlled by people who don't have to work. I want to represent the people who have to work every day, and you can't do that in a partisan environment like in Washington when you're going to go, one thing you know for sure, if a Republican wins, they're going to vote 99% of the times with the Republican. If the Democrat wins, they're going to vote 99% with the Democrat. Why don't they go over there and vote 99% of the times with me and you and the people of Louisiana? And that's why I'm an independent.
Wow. Candidate Troy Hebert, one of the candidates for U.S. Senate. Sir, I want to thank you so much for your time this morning. We certainly do appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You know you're my favorite radio personality. You always have. You always will be. Thank you so much for the time.
I promise to give you that $20 then.
Make it in cash. All right.
That's right, babe. All right. Take care.
Thank y'all. Y'all keep up the good work over there. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Bye-bye.
You can listen to all the 5 questions, a series of interviews that we have. Yep. All on kpel965.com. We will continue to have them up until the election.
And if you want to see, Troy Hebert's interview or debate,
his mock debate, yes,
his mock debate, you can go and check that out as well. Now, you had us do a little live on Facebook this morning.
Yeah, we did Facebook Live, yes.
So are we going to do that every day now?
I think we'll kind of work it in more and more. You know, I don't always look good in the morning. You always look stunning.
Oh,
but
you want $20 as well,
yeah,
don't you?
Yeah, I think so. No, we'll start to do it more and more.
Okay,
look out for it there.
Okay, so basically that means I have to go on a crash diet I'm going to have to get my nails done today. I'm going to have to get my face reworked. Boy, I got a lot of work to do.
Lot to do, yes.
All right, okay. But
All
maybe
right.
I should actually do some news on the way.
Stay with us, yes. 8:31.
Well, good morning again, and welcome back. Welcome back to the Moon Griffon Show. I'm Carol Ross. My pleasure to be with you on this morning after. The morning after. So anyway, I know I can't help it. I know you want to talk about it. You can get in on the action. Hickson has it. Hotline 844-766-6607. 844-7-MOON-07. We have Shelley standing by in Farmerville. Shelley, go ahead. You're on the Moon Griffon Show. Hey, Shelley. Hello. That's just breaking up.
Hello?
Hey, Shelley, there you are. Hello?
Yeah, the music's playing.
Well, turn
There
off
you
your
go.
radio.
Now I can hear.
Well, you need to turn off your radio and just
The
listen
radio
through the
wasn't
phone.
on. It was coming from the phone.
Oh, my. Okay. Go ahead, Shelley. You're on the Moon Griffon Show.
Okay. I would like to say that Hillary likes to paint pictures, or she likes to remind people of pictures of which they have seen when she's debating. And last night she gave an instance, and I thought Donald Trump missed the opening of the door. She said on the illegal immigrations, what would we have to do? Put them on buses and trains? And he could have said easily, no, but when you put them on buses and trains, you should have put them in reverse and sent them back to where they were supposed to be.
Oh, boy. Well, I think he missed a lot
Because
of, actually.
everyone saw the...
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I think he missed a lot of openings last night that we, that we who support him wish he would just jump on some of these things and be a little more disciplined in his responses. Because really and truly, he's got two disadvantages. He's a man debating a woman, and he's a guy who really, he paints in broad pictures, but she's a wonk. So she can come back at him with blah, 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 and it's really hard to refute that. So you got to be a little more disciplined than he is. But I'll tell you what, Thomas Sowell wrote one of the best articles for why he's still voting for Donald Trump and not Hillary Clinton, and it all has to be with her criminality, her repeated criminality.
Oh, absolutely. And another thing that I would like to see, if I were in that ad business, I would like to present to them an ad which showed a school in the background and cars in the lanes waiting at the school crossing while they were crossing the school lanes, and a big yellow school bus with an ISIS fighter in his fighting garb, and the side of the school bus saying, ISIS recruiter bus.
Oh, God.
And with a big billboard that would say, coming to a neighborhood near you soon.
Yeah, well, it's a scary thought, isn't it? Well, Shelley, thanks for calling in. We appreciate you. We have Lamar from Alexandria. Lamar, go ahead. You're on the Moon Griffon Show.
I wanted to just comment. The problem with Donald Trump is he got integrity, and none of us does. When they asked him that question at the beginning of the campaign, he said, "I'm not." He didn't commit to support the other people until he looked at it and seen what it was, and he thought about it. The others glibly said it and didn't mean it, and didn't have enough integrity for an ounce of integrity. But Donald Trump, he has been saying all along that he thinks there's some voter fraud and stuff like that. So he wasn't going to stand up there and say, no matter what, I'm not going to do anything.
Well, there have been...
he's a man of integrity. He's not going to stand up there and say, I'm going to accept it if he knows good and well. He suspects a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So what in the world? The news, that's all you hear on the news today.
I know. Well,
and that's strictly, he's got integrity, and none of the others do.
Well, Lamar, here's the problem. Here's the problem with that a more disciplined candidate would have backed off, would have demurred just a little bit on that, because you're giving him a headline. That's exactly what he did.
Well, he gave him a headline, but that's because they're so in the tank for Hillary.
Well, yeah, of course.
Anybody would know that even Fox News keeps saying it. Anybody would know that if he thinks there's voter fraud and he's saying it, and you ask him, are you going to accept the election? Well, he's thinking, if there's evidence of voter fraud, I'm not going to accept it. So he didn't say it. He said, when it comes time, if there's no voter fraud, I'll just decide at that point.
Yep.
That's what a man of integrity. That's what anybody with integrity would see.
Well, I think he has his doubts. A lot of people have their doubts. There have been proven cases of voter fraud. There's no question about that. They're allowing illegals to vote in local elections in California, in state and local elections in California. As soon as they get an ID, they don't care. They don't check proof of citizenship. So anyway, that is not supposed to happen on the federal level. But, stranger things have happened. Lamar, thanks for your call. We really appreciate it very much. We got callers standing by. Thank you. Okay, who's that? We got Glenn in Lafayette. Glenn, go ahead. You're on the Moon Griffon Show.
Yes, I heard you earlier talking about the local media, that they're not like the national media, that they do something a little different. Well, I sit down and I watch the 5 o'clock, the 6 o'clock, and the 10 o'clock news. And you only get 5 minutes of news and 15 minutes of weather. But that's a different topic. The news you get is in a national feed from the corporate organizations. You're not getting what they think of their report. They just play it off the report, teletype, and they're reading it out loud.
Well, I understand that's the national news feed that they get, but most of the local stations that do local news, and I'm talking about strictly local news, they're not as ideologically driven. They really are not.
No, you're right. The local news, when they're reporting local, but at 5 o'clock, if you look, they're reporting national.
Well, I understand. I agree with you, but
therefore, they're second as much as the national, as much as the 6 o'clock or 10 o'clock news, because they're reading the same talking points. They're not being objective about it.
Well,
you can watch locally.
They are getting news feeds from their national organizations about the national news. I'm talking about on the local level, covering local news. Most of the stations are not that ideologically driven. So anyway, but thanks for your call, Glenn. I understand what you're saying. I really do. I've been in this business a long time, and there are times I do get frustrated with some of the local stations. However, I think in general, they try to do a good job covering the news. My problem with some of the local stations is I don't think they do enough investigative reporting on some of the local issues that go on that it's hard to track down. It is hard to do investigative reporting when you have economic pressures. You don't have this kind of staff that they used to have, and they're really fighting a lot of other pressures. So they don't hire the investigative reporters unless you're in a big city. Then usually you have the funding to do investigative reporting. The local stations try. I mean, they want to serve their communities, but it's not always easy, and it costs. Anyway, we got Norman. Oh, my good buddy, Norman in Poche Bridge. Well, it wouldn't be a day on the Moon Griffon Show if I didn't hear from Norman.
Oh, I skip a day every once in a while there, Carol. I have to tell you.
For me.
It's kind of some fresh and gray skies today.
Yeah, it is. It is.
You were talking a little bit about Trump not accepting or not accepting the count in the election. The follow-up question is, has Al Gore accepted the count in the election he was in?
Well, that was a spectacle, wasn't it?
I'm just asking.
The Democrats didn't. Now, Al Gore eventually did concede, but the Democrats have hammered on Bush from day one, talking about it was an illegitimate election, What did you hear? You heard that for 8 years. They never got over it. And really, thanks, Norman. I appreciate you calling. Okay. I appreciate that. Very good call.
I'm going to let you go, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Shab. But maybe we'll have those Cajun blue skies again soon.
No, tomorrow.
I hope so. Okay, good deal. Thanks, Norman.
Bye.
Okay, we've got James in where? New Iberia. I got to get new glasses. That thing is way too high for me to see. James in New Iberia, go ahead. You're on the Moon Griffon Show.
Hi. Listen, I don't know if y'all watched the media coverage after the debate, but a lot of them were, acting shocked by Donald Trump's claim that it could be rigged, that the election could be rigged. And and they were saying, "Oh, that's against our democracy."
Oh, yes.
Something like that.
Oh, yes.
But just think about this for a moment. Just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, wasn't Hillary Clinton in the news media claiming that the election could be rigged in favor of Trump by the Russians? That it could be hacked and they could rig it? Oh, so they could claim that the election can possibly be rigged, but if Trump says that it's possibly rigged, oh no, that's against democracy. He's going against tradition, American tradition.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much. That's a good point. Thank you, James. We've got Jean in Lafayette. Jean, go ahead. You're on the Moon Griffon show.
I wanted to weigh in a little bit on the whole thing. Last night I went to bed and because of the television coverage, I was really down thinking that Trump saying that he would not accept the results of the election, that was the end of everywhere. But you know what? It's not the case. Win or lose, that man, he is a brawler. He is going to find out what happened.
And isn't that what we want? We want somebody to push back. We want somebody to finally push back.
So I went to bed feeling really frustrated, and I got up feeling good. I really am a supporter of this man.
Let me tell you,
I think everybody.
I'm gonna be with you on this thing, Jean. I don't think he lost anybody who supports him. Whether he expanded his appeal, I don't know about that. But I don't think he lost a one. And in fact, on the issue of abortion, that, coming out on the Supreme Court thing right away and being as clear as he was on the issue of abortion, I think he definitely reinforced his evangelical vote, because they've come out for him a lot stronger than they ever came out for Mitt Romney, and they're sticking with him. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
If we can get those 4 million votes back, so be it.
That would help a great deal. Jean, thanks for calling. I really feel so much better today. Yeah,
right,
listen.
Bye-bye.
Hey, stay strong. Gird your loins. Be happy. Be the happy warrior, like Ronald Reagan said, and he was. But we want to hear from you. God, the phone calls are coming in fast and furious. 844-766-6607 on the Moon Griffon Show. Stay with us. We want to hear from you. Oh, we're back. You're back. Everybody's back. I was telling, I think it was Jean, she said she went to bed kind of depressed and she woke up feeling a lot better. Good. Don't let any of this get you down. It ain't over till it's over. We got 19 days to go. Tell everybody you know they got to get out there. That and I said this, we've been getting so many phone calls that I want to get to, but there's an absolutely stunning article that was done by Thomas Sowell, who in can't remember what publication. And he said, Donald Trump's gutter talk about women shows yet again that he's bad news. The problem is Hillary Clinton is far worse. Trump's talk is indefensible, but Hillary Clinton's actions as Secretary of State carrying out the Obama administration's foreign policies have cost many lives in many places, including the American ambassador and others killed in Benghazi. That alone should keep her from being, this is me talking now, commander-in-chief of anybody in any military anywhere. We have a right as women to be offended by Trump's words, back to Thomas Sowell. But women have suffered a far worse fate from Secretary Clinton's and President Obama's actions. Pulling American troops out of Iraq despite military advice to the contrary led to the sudden rise of ISIS and their seizing of many women and young girls as sex slaves. A message from one of these women urged the bombing of ISIS. She said she'd rather be dead than live the life of a sex slave. Some women tried to commit suicide, failed, have been tortured for trying. Meanwhile, President Obama downplayed ISIS with flippant words, calling them junior varsity. It's unbelievable. What happened with ISIS, the rise of ISIS, is a lot worse than some stupid and gross words by Donald Trump, which even he has repudiated. Still quoting Thomas Sowell, are women more in danger from Trump's words or Hillary's actions? Are Americans in general more in danger from Trump's shallowness on issues or Hillary's ruthless grabs for money and power, a track record that goes all the way back to the days when Bill Clinton was governor of Arkansas? Mrs. Clinton's own announced agenda attacks the very foundation of American constitutional government. This is particularly why I want to share this with you, because he reinforces what we started the show with, what she started the debate with last night. She has already said that she will appoint Supreme Court justices who will specifically overturn a recent Supreme Court decision, Citizens United versus the FEC. Citizens United. That decision said that both corporations and labor unions have freedom of speech, including the right to contribute money toward political campaigns. Her determination to pick judicial appointees on the basis of their willingness to overturn that decision, or frankly, Carol talking now, any decision, there should not be a litmus test for any of these things for a Supreme Court justice to be nominated or appointed. Anyway, her willingness to overturn that decision is more brazen extension of the political left's other attempts to stifle the free speech of those who oppose their agenda. They're coming after talk radio. Book it. Demands that various advocacy organizations reveal the names of their donors are an obvious attempt to scare off the donors, with harassment by everyone from vandals to rioters. We saw that. It was Rent-A-Mob, and it came from the Hillary Clinton campaign, cash from Hillary Clinton to the DNC to these outside groups to foment and suppress freedom of speech. What do you think that was at that rally in Chicago? Shutting down freedom of speech. Without the right to free speech, none of the other rights is safe. Government officials can get away with all sorts of abuses if others are not free to talk about those abuses. And he goes on, but you get the gist of it. And that's my reason for wanting a Donald Trump. With all of his faults, he's already made a commitment to originalist justices on the Supreme Court, and he's made the commitment to clean out the swamp in D.C. We will have none of that with Hillary Clinton. You can book it. You can take it to whatever bank you bank at. Who do we have holding? Don on the road. Don, go ahead. You're on the Moon Griffon Show. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. I've just been hearing all the rhetoric, and I watched two of the debates. I didn't catch the middle one, and I wanted to, but I just want to say to the American people, how many's listening, if you haven't made your mind up between the two by now of who's the best candidate to be our president, you're either blind or you don't care about the country, or you're just so prideful that you don't want to change your mind. But and all I'm saying is, if you can't see that Trump is the best candidate out of the two, and if they love chaos that much, if they love that, Hillary uses the word horrific a lot of Trump. Well, if they want to see horrific, Halloween's just around the corner. Go ahead and vote Hillary Clinton in, and you're going to find out what horrific.
Hey, Don, we're on a hard break. We're on the Moon Griffon Show. Stay with us. Got some new bumper music. I know you want to talk. I just had to get that thing on about Thomas Sowell because I thought it was one of the most cogent reasonings for voting for Donald Trump, as flawed as he is. You know, this may be the first time in my memory that we actually knew in advance of a guy going into the White House that he was, he maybe had some unusual dealings with women, okay? This goes way back in our history. I think was it Grover Cleveland? Way back then. Anyway, it goes on and on. So, as Thomas Sowell said, you're offended by his words, but how do you feel about her actions? And they've actually put us in a lot of danger. So we have Jack hanging on. Jack in Alexandria. Go ahead, you're on the Moon Griffon Show. Good to hear from you, Jack.
Hi, Carol. I told you a couple of years ago there, I think that you're the best replacement host for Moon Griffon, and I really believe that.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you.
You're welcome. I watched the whole debate last night, and my theory about the debate, it's not what Hillary said, it's what she didn't say. Because they repeatedly asked her questions, and occasionally Chris Wallace would come back behind and ask her to answer the questions. She still wouldn't answer.
Exactly. That's what I meant about the filibustering. You know, and that is the only criticism I have for Chris Wallace. It was hard for him to get her to stop that.
And you know what, Carol? One thing that during the debate prep on the first two, noticed that she was all smiles. But last night, about 10 or 15 minutes into it, I think she showed her real self. She was getting hacked. Did you see that?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I didn't see it that early, but I saw it about half an hour into it. I didn't notice it that early, but I noticed she looked like she was sucking on a prune. You know, as the debate went on, it was like her face got tighter and tighter, and you could see the venom coming out of her eyes, and she's looking at him like, yeah, you know, look at you. Anyway, yes, and I actually think finally in the last half hour, when Wallace backed off and let him go at her really hard, and he really did score some points in that last half hour, and that's when I saw her getting. I mean, the face was so tight, it was unbelievable.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
And Carol, one more thing, and we'll get off the phone. Is it going to be today or tomorrow you're going to announce the big pay raise for Brandon?
I love Brandon. Let me tell you, people don't understand. This is the hardest working man in radio. Anybody who puts up with Moon Griffon for 2 hours every day, you know, and still has a smile on his face, man, I tell you what, that's a great guy. Jack, thanks so much. Thanks so much for calling. Okay.
Y'all are too kind.
Well, you know, you deserve it. David in Lafayette, go ahead. You're on the Moon Griffon Show.
Yeah, 2 points, actually. When Trump is saying that this election is rigged, we have to remember for the last 4, 5, 6 months now, the Democratic Party is pushing to allow felons the ability to vote again. So who are they going to be supporting if not the Democrats? And something else I'd like to mention is the abortion issue. If you listen to what Hillary said, it was to protect the woman's health. Now, that has nothing to do with what abortion is about. Not 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they claim, though.
Right, and that's the point that people need to realize. What is she really saying?
David, I'll tell you the truth. On that issue, I really wish Trump had been a little more specific, because even I know pro-choice people who are totally offended by partial birth abortion, as they call it, partial birth. What's a partial birth? Come on. It's infanticide is basically what it is, and Hillary Clinton supports it, and Barack Obama was the only member of the Illinois legislature, the Senate. When he was a senator from Illinois, he voted against eliminating partial birth abortion, the only one. And there are a lot of liberals in the Illinois Senate, but he was the only one. That is a travesty. And as I say, I have friends who are mildly pro-choice, let's call it, and they even believe that partial birth, there's no excuse for that. You know, we can have our philosophical differences on religion and those kind of things, but under the legal definition, those are viable human beings at that point in time.
And what they need to clarify, too, is if you stand with abortionists and you think abortion is okay, what position do you take on the death penalty?
Yeah, it's a terrible.
When someone is convicted of murdering, you know, they'll defend with their own lives to protect a murderer, but they're not going to protect an innocent baby.
Well, and her whole point about Planned Parenthood and a cancer screen, I don't even think they do mammograms. I mean, they make their money. We saw the videos, and they were not edited. Sorry about that, people. They were not edited. They were selling baby parts. That's where they made a lot of money. And it's unconscionable. It's unconscionable. They want to come after James O'Keefe. The only thing he got convicted for was impersonating somebody in a federal office, which was Mary Landrieu's office, because she wasn't answering the phone, and she kept saying that her phones were broken or whatever. So he dressed up as a telephone repairman to go in to prove that the phones were working. Well, he got caught. And so, you know, he served, what did you tell me, Brandon, 10 months or something like that?
Yeah,
he served
like 10
months.
Mm-hmm.
Big deal.
Yeah.
They haven't been able to prove anything on him ever since. This kid is good. He's good. And he's doing the job that the mainstream media does not do.
And the mainstream media, I'm glad you mentioned this, what we're looking at is mind control.
Oh, yeah.
Anything they put on is slamming Donald Trump in negative ways. And when they talk about Hillary, they're always pointing out what she stands against Donald Trump for.
Well, let me tell you, that's that's why our educational system that's why our educational system is so important to liberals to control. Because once you can do that, once you got the educational system, you know, big media, big education, big government. Once you got that, you're done.
I'm trying to find somebody to do a bumper sticker that says "Cure stupidity, get an education," but nobody will take it up for me.
David, thanks for calling. We appreciate you. We have another caller standing by. We got Mark in Lafayette. Mark, go ahead. You're on the Moon Griffon Show.
Hey, thank you so much for taking my call. A quick comment about the debate last night. They was talking about the judges, who they were going to appoint or whatnot. But she said this about a year ago. I guess it was in the Democrat primaries that she would elect or she would select Obama as a Supreme Court justice. And she did say that on CNN. She would really consider hard about putting Obama on the Supreme Court.
Well,
So
you know, she might get him if he weren't going for God of the world, you know, the head of the world, like maybe UN Secretary General or something like. He wants a bigger platform. He wants a much bigger platform. We joked about it one time on the local show here. Somebody said, well, do you think he's a Christian or do you think he's a Muslim? I said, I don't think he recognizes any deity above himself. He's a narcissist.
Right.
He is a narcissist.
Well, my comment about Bill and Hillary Clinton remind me of Bonnie and Clyde. If they get in the White House, that's what it's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Bonnie and Clyde in the White House.
You remember all the stuff they ripped off that she had to return? Those were published reports in the L.A. Times. They stole stuff out of the White House, including all the W keys off the typewriters and computers. How do you like that? What a bunch bunch of scumbags. I'm sorry. Thanks, Mark.
Thank
we appreciate
you.
you.
Call,
Take
sweetie.
care.
You have a wonderful day, love.
You too, babe. Bye. And we have Deborah in West Monroe. Go ahead, Deborah. You're on the Moon Griffon Show.
Hello, Carol.
And how are you?
It just goes to show you that money does not give you class. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Gotcha.
I want to mention last night, we got some really fine United States American soldiers out in Mosul. And again, taking a city that was already taken once and a lot of blood and treasure.
Exactly,
lost.
yes.
And the point that Trump brought out just really sent a shock through my spine was the fact that our men and women over there fighting, when they do succeed, and we do succeed, if you think these Iraqis are doing it, no, they throw down their arms and they haul butt.
Well, Deborah, didn't you think it was interesting that she said we're not going to put boots on the ground? We got boots on the ground right now.
We've had boots on the ground, my baby. I keep in touch with them all the time. And I'm telling you, the thought that they're going to risk, again, their lives, our treasure, for Iran, I mean...
And do the same
honestly,
thing, and she's going to do the same thing Obama did?
Exactly. And that just really tells the people the truth for once. We got really the truth.
I tell you what, you got to have full-time fact checkers with Hillary Clinton. She is an accomplished liar.
Yeah, they don't know what's going to happen once you take when she got rid of Gaddafi, and we all watched him get slaughtered by the people and her taking credit for it. What happened? They didn't replace anything there but another dictator under a perverted religion that was going to just do maybe the same and maybe the worst of the same. It's just unending. Until Jesus comes, girlfriend, it's going to be hell over there.
You know, Trump has pointed that out over and over again. She's been in there all this time. One failure after another. One failure after another. Libya, Syria. Thank goodness General Sisi came in Egypt and took that country back because the Muslim Brotherhood was doing their best. And there you have Israel sitting over there in the middle of that tinderbox.
In a hellhole.
Oh my
Putin,
gosh.
I can say one thing about Putin, and he likes to show his six-pack. Okay with that.
Oh,
I'm a woman.
What six-pack? He's gross. He's not.
You think he's gross?
He is gross.
Maybe I don't.
Like my
bar's
he's like
not
a little
high.
rat. He's got a little rat face.
My bar's not high. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying.
Deborah, come on. Come on. You have higher standards than that. I know that.
All I can say is the difference is he wears a cross around his neck. And that is a hope for everybody. If he knows Christ and he believes in God Almighty, there's hope for Putin.
Oh,
And
Deborah, I got to disagree with you. I don't think that Putin is. I'm reading.
Well, it's not like I got.
I'm reading a book right now.
Bedroom.
I'm reading a book right now
saying.
called Once Upon a Time in Moscow, in Russia. Once Upon a Time in Russia, and it's the rise of the oligarchs. And Putin, they thought they could control him. Hello. Yeah. Deborah, we got to go. We got another caller hanging on. Thank you so much for calling in. Always good to hear from Deborah. We got Ralph. Ralph, tell me again how to pronounce that.
All right, so that is Doylene, but we'll have to take that after the break.
Yeah,
though.
we'll take it after the break. Ralph, hang in there. We'll be back on the Moon Griffon Show. We're back to the traditional bumper music now.
I don't play that on Moon.
It's okay, you don't.
No, not this one. Although it does kind of sound like something Moon would like, though.
Yeah, I love Joe Walsh. Anyway, okay, back to the serious stuff. But we can have fun with the serious stuff. Anyway, we got Ralph and Doylene hanging on. Ralph, go ahead. You're on the Moon Griffon Show.
Well, thank you. I enjoy it. They're talking about Hillary might put Obama on the Supreme Court. Doesn't he have to have a law license? Won't he have to get it back before they can do that?
Oh, that's a good point. I don't know if you have to have a law license anymore. I have no idea. You know what, Ralph? Let me tell you, Ralph, that's a good question. What are the qualifications for a Supreme Court judge? Do they have to have a law license? I think at one time they didn't, but now I think they do. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to check that out. Yeah, you're right.
And also, she was counting out her accomplishments. Hillary was how she's fought for women's rights and children's rights.
Yes.
But she supports the murder of innocent children every day through abortion. She supports children, but she helped a rapist who was convicted get off for raping a 12-year-old girl and only had to serve 2 months.
And harassed that little girl. Harassed her.
Yeah. That's right. Matter of fact,
just
the
like
law was changed because of the tactics that she used is one of the big reasons they changed the law on how you can treat children that have been raped.
Oh, man,
and
as I said.
She was very abusive to her.
Yes.
But, she's fought for kids' rights. Everything she said that she's done, like Trump said, but they're all bad.
Yes, and
all bad.
I have this fact-checking thing about, all taking care of children. And, Bill has said this in speeches. Hillary was an excellent senator who kept fighting for children's and women's issues. And the fact is, and this is according to Dick Morris, I mean, he knows them very, very well. He put out this fact-checking sheet. Other than totally meaningless legislation like changing the names on courthouses and post offices, she's passed only 4 substantive pieces of legislation. One set up a national park in Puerto Rico. A second provided respite care for family members helping their relatives through Alzheimer's or other conditions. That's a good one. But not earth-shattering, is it? And 2 were routine bills to aid 9/11 victims and responders. And it was sponsored by the entire New York delegation.
Yes.
So,
Well, a lot of people don't realize that it's one lie after another.
Yes, it is.
33,000 homicides, she said, with guns. Well, she was a lawyer. She doesn't have a law license anymore. She lost it. But you take the fact that she should still know that suicide and homicide are 2 different things.
You would think, huh? All right, Ralph.
Yeah, and 75% of them were suicide.
Wow.
Yeah,
Ralph, thank you so much. Thank you so much for calling in. We got other calls, and I did want to make one more point. Bill always points out to the fact that she served on the board of the Arkansas Children's Hospital. And Dick Morris says, yes, she did, but her main board activity was to sit on the Walmart board of directors for a substantial fee. Hello. Always for a substantial fee with this woman. Ted in Donaldsonville. Go ahead, Ted. You're on the Moon Griffon Show. Ted.
Hey, Miss Carol.
Hey.
All right, I'm from the Breaux Bridge area. I just happen to be in Donaldsonville.
Oh, okay.
Today.
Okay.
I was calling to bring attention to what Senator Ted Cruz is calling for a serious criminal investigation into that Robert Kramer guy that's visited the White House.
342 times.
And he had 45 meetings with Obama.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the guy that's tied to organized crime. So this ties our president to organized crime.
Are you surprised? Is anybody surprised? He's from Chicago. Hey, it's Chicago.
We've been knowing this for a long time, but I mean, here's proof. Now, why isn't the mainstream media?
Let me tell you something. Here's the picture I get of the mainstream media. Whenever these facts come out about Obama or the Democrats or Hillary Clinton, they stand there with their hands in their ears, their fingers in their ears, doing la 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 la. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Don't want to know. Don't want to see it. Don't want to hear it. They're absolutely in the tank, and if anybody's rigging the election, it's them. And that's why we need a Citizens United. It's the only way to level the playing field. Only way. Well, and you know what, Ted? Chris Farrell with Judicial Watch said over and over again, this was not a security review. She kept saying it was a security review on the emails. It was not. There was not an argument over the classification levels. This was a violation of Title 18 of the Code, mishandling national defense information. And contrary to what the public has been told, intent is not an element of the crime. There's not a requirement to prove any sort of intent. She broke the law. She broke the law. Ted, thanks for calling. We have one more, and I think this may be our last call to get in. Big Al from Shreveport. Big Al, go ahead. You're on the Moon Griffon Show.
Hey, I just looked up, Googled it, the qualifications for the Supreme Court. Thank you for taking my call. There are really no qualifications for the Supreme Court. They recommend that it be a member in good standing in the bar for 5 years, or a trial attorney and a trial judge for 12 years, and a competent citizen of good character. So I think that leaves him out completely.
Yeah, you think a competent citizen of good character. That would leave about 3/4 of our politicians out, right? Confident citizen of good character. Okay, I'll have to chew on that for a while. Big Al, thank you for calling in. We appreciate that. Got those smart listeners on the Moon Griffon Show. I tell you what, you keep us straight, you keep us informed. We try to do the same for you. Following up on that Chris Farrell thing that I was just talking about. Sensitive compartmented information. Yeah. The Inspector General of the Intelligence Community said 22 top secret sensitive compartmented pieces of information, SCI, sensitive compartmented information. It's a special category of intelligence collection. 22 top secret SCI messages or emails went across her unsecured server. It's a fact. It's a finding of the Inspector General. FBI didn't even need to go any farther than that. It was a criminal violation of the law. Fasten your seatbelts. We got a crazy 19 days coming up. There's going to be stuff flying out all over the place. Do your fact checking, and remember, you'll never drain the swamp with somebody who's been in the swamp for 30 years. Eh? As they say in Canada. Have a great day, my friends. It's been my pleasure to spend this time with you. Take care.